The Sega Cards is the 7th entry in the Duel Monster games. It came out in Japan on July of 2002 and came to America in November of 2003, which looking back now, that's a crazy wide release gap. The gap in release is most likely because YuGiOh was still new and fresh around 2002 in the US. To give you a better view of the timeline, this game covers Battle City up to its climax. The dub in America in July 2002 was just reaching the Duelist Kingdom finals. This game is the third YuGiOh game on the GBA, with the first two being Expert 5 and 6. Now, one would think that the rules of the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games would stay there. The GBA games up to this point were using the official rules of the card game. So for this game to come out with the old rules is a bit unexpected. I have no idea why they decided to flip-flop between the rule sets. I don't mind it, since it's a bit refreshing to play something different every now and then. Before I start speaking on this game, I want to correct two mistakes that I made in my last video. I said before that Mai has 3 copies of Cyber Harpy Lady and Vanilla Harpy Ladies.
Psych a lot!
Since Cyber Harpy Lady counts as Harpy Lady no matter where it is, you're not allowed to run more than 3 copies of the Vanilla if you have 3 Cyber ones in the deck already. I feel like I made this mistake because every game that I had with her, she always started with Cyber Harpy Lady, and majority of the time she also had Elegant Egotist. This scenario happening over and over again every duel made it feel like she had multiple copies of Harpy Lady. Now, according to a wiki article in Expert 6, some opponents came with fixed hands every now and then. Since Worldwide Edition is an update to 6, it's not too far-fetched to think that this carried on over to the next game. It's been shown in games like Forbidden Memories that the computer can cheat from time to time, so it's not the craziest thing to think that the computer is cheating at times as a player. The second mistake is assuming Revival Jam is not in the game. At the start, I tried using a password for it, but the game wouldn't give it to me. And since Strings doesn't have a copy in his deck according to the FAQs, I just assumed it wasn't in the game entirely. Some cards that I tried to get like Last Will were also not in the game, so I just didn't look much deeper than that. But apparently to another FAQ for the game, Revival Jam is in the game. So now I'm more puzzled as to why Strings didn't have the card at all. I also have to admit the fact that I probably used the wrong password for Revival Jam, since I was able to get it after checking. I'm only human, so I probably would make some mistakes every now and then. I'm truly lucky to have people watch my videos and care enough to comment about any mishaps they come across. Weird to say this, but I want to keep the integrity of the information on this channel in a positive light, and with you guys helping me spot my mistakes, I can try my best to keep it there. Now with all of that out of the way, we can talk about the game now. It starts off with you naming your character. When you're finished with that, Joey just barges into your studio apartment. They start talking about the decks they made last night and asks if you made a good one. This is what you woke me up for?
Ain't nobody trying to hear that bullshit, man.
After a few words, they start going to the plaza so they could listen to the announcement for the tournament. Kaiba drops in soon after and starts talking about the rules.
And anyone who's late for registration will be disqualified. Mokuba, make sure Wheeler's late.
There are 6 locator cards that the players have to collect. Once you collect all 6, it shows the location where the finals will take place. If you win against another player, you get their best card. Lose and you lose the card that you bet. For now, the tournament hasn't even started yet. You first have to go around town and talk to some of the main characters. Or at least that's what I thought at first until I actually did it and nothing happened. What you actually have to do is try to challenge them to a duel with the right bumper. They usually remark that the tournament hasn't started yet and they walk off afterwards. After you see everyone, you have to walk back to the plaza and try to leave it. Everybody then pops up and they say their goals for the tournament. I have to say that the dialogue in this game is very minimal. Things are kept short to a strange degree. It's weird that the past YuGiOh games have dialogue boxes with a lot to say, and this game has a small box of them barely saying like 2 lines. Now that the tournament is popping off, I thought it was a good time to check out my deck. And wow, this deck is complete ass! Even the cards in the trunk don't help much. Speaking of the trunk, the way you organize cards in this game is a bit strange. You can sort all the cards in the trunk that you own. However, for some reason, the trunk also shows cards that you don't own? I guess on one hand it's cool to see the whole card list. On the other hand, this could be confusing to look at sometimes when you're not used to it. On the top of the screen, you can see that the deck capacity is back. Every card has a cost, and you can only fit cards in the deck up to the max capacity that you can have. You get more capacity by winning duels. Duels against randoms gain you about 5, duels against the main cast net you more. Duels in this game operate under the rules of the older Duel Monster games and not the official card game rules. Although it shares most of the rules with the official rules, the main thing to mention is the different type advantages. Certain types have advantages over other types. So if you have a weak water monster fighting against a strong fire monster, the weaker monster will win because water wins over fire. I felt like an idea that would be the most advantageous for me is to focus on two types that cover each other well. I also wanted to have enough cards in the trunk to adjust my deck whenever I need to have an advantage over certain duelists. For now, my main focus was to find some sort of card shop to get some more cards. Walking outside Domino puts you in the town map. From there, you can choose an area you would like to go to. One of the areas you're allowed to go to at the start is the card shop. Honestly, this shop looks shady as shit and the music is kinda creepy. The owner has this soulless stare and there's a guy that blocks the entrance to the storage. The storage room is down there. All merchandise is down there.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
Some of the dialogue in this game is definitely repetitive. It makes the game feel like a weird amateur indie game. I checked the cards in the shop and a lot of it seems like ass at first. However, if you take into account the type advantages in this game, a lot of the cards can end up rather useful. Even something as weak as a monster with 0 attack power can have some use in a duel. The real problem is the price of some of these cards. Anything that was a 4-star monster with more than 1600 costs way too much for now. Any 5 to 6-star monster that was beyond 2000 attack power was also outside of my price range. However, anything that was a 7-star or higher tend to be extremely cheap. This is probably because they tend to be more of a hassle to summon since they need 2 monsters sacrificed to be summoned. And since any monster can die to any monster with the opposing type, it's probably not worth summoning any of these. The effect monsters also tend to cost a little bit more too. Now, there is a password machine right there. Let me just put in the password for the summon skull and... my what isn't high enough? Yeah, so not only do the cards have a cost, but the cost is also the level of the card. So at this point, I can only use cards with a cost of 73 or lower in my deck. Anything higher and the game will not let me add the card to my deck even if I have the capacity for it. So you can't cheese this game right out the gate with passwords alone. You gotta earn your stripes first.
You can't be any geek off the street.
At the very least, you can use the passwords of weaker cards to have in a trunk for certain type matchups. Or at least that's what I thought until I realized none of the cards that I put passwords for were in the trunk. Then it hit me. The cards that you put passwords for do not go in the trunk. It goes into the shop where you have to buy it afterwards. What is you talking about? I get it. This is made in a way where you can't cheese this at all. Fair enough. But do I really have to spend cash for the garbage cards too? With this in mind, I thought of a plan. I know that none of the main characters have a deck that focuses on fire, so keeping aqua cards around doesn't benefit me in the long run. I sold all my water cards to buy multiple copies of Yami and Trent. Trent changes the field to forest to give himself and forest monsters a boost. Since none of the main characters focus around fire, I thought it would be a good idea to base my deck around forest with a splash of darkness. I used the rest of the cash to buy monster cards that get a boost in the terrains in my deck now. Now that I'm done with that, let me explain some of the things that happen before, during, and after the duels. Before a duel starts, you have to wager a card. If you bet a rare card, you get a rare card. If you bet some garbage, you get garbage. At the start, I didn't have any good cards to bet, so I was getting shitty rewards a lot of the time. You might want to buy a good card at the shop just to bet with it. The second part is how boosts work in this game. The boost that you get from card terrain is percentage based. You can either gain or lose 30% of your stat total. Some cards, however, do a flat increase and decrease of 500. I mention this because at times the life point values get jacked up like crazy. There have been times I had trouble keeping track of how much damage I can take and how much I can dish out. Another thing is now that when a monster uses its effect, it can't attack for that turn. Kinda like Magic the Gathering summoning sickness, but only with effects. So effect sickness? The last thing to mention is that you cannot rematch the opponent you fought right away. You have to wait a bit to run things back. I left the shop to go back to Domino City to duel some more scrubs so I could get my money up. Most of the randoms in the plaza don't have remarkable decks. The duels here are mostly to give you a grip on the game. Their decks have a bunch of monsters around the 300 attack range, while your deck consists of mostly 400 to 700 attack power monsters. I duel Tristan up the way, but his deck is just as bad as the rest. I got Nakogo though, which is helpful for my deck type. It costs a lot to put her in the deck though, so I can't fit her in just yet. After I beat all the randoms, I went to the art museum to duel Bakura. Bakura might be tough depending on what changes you made to your deck at this point. His deck mostly consists of fiends that are about 500 to 700 attack power. That sounds low, and trust me it is, but compared to what you start with, he could give you a bit of trouble if you didn't change your deck a bit. Seeing that his deck was fiends, I also had to focus on my forest cards getting powered up instead of boosting his cards and my cards with Yami. I highly suggest dueling Bakura ASAP because he nets you about 3,000 bucks for no reason. I then try to duel Rex, but he says I'm too weak to be worth it. Says the guy that got ridden out the tournament in the first round. I go deeper into Domino City and I find Kaiba Court. The security there tells you to get lost but does absolutely nothing to stop me from entering the building. I challenged the security guard to a duel for his insolence and he almost smoked me. Most of his cards are in the 800 to 900 attack range. Most of my cards at this point are still around 400 to 700. Luckily I drew into the beat stick I needed and had it powered up by my field spell. Even though most of his cards have higher attack than mine, it would still take a lot of turns to finish the game with monsters that weak. That easily gives me enough time to draw the things that I need to beat him. I suggest fighting him when you're confident ASAP because you get 30 capacity for beating him and like $5,000. With that much money I went right back to the card shop to get some cards that get a boost in Force and Darkness. I also got monsters that summon other monsters out of nothing. See, in the official game, the cards that special summon other monsters are restricted to the cards that you have in your deck, hand, and graveyard. However, in this game, some cards can summon other cards that you don't even own. For example, the Toadmaster summons Jam the Frog from thin air to the board for free. These kind of cards are super useful to draw into on the first turn. Not only is it good to have 2 monsters on the board right from the start, but it makes it so much easier to summon a 5 or 6 star monster on the second turn. I later dueled the duel machine right after the changes I made to my deck. It couldn't even stand a chance. At this point, money is not even an issue anymore. The real issue from now on is the deck capacity.
Fuck this money! Oh damn, it doesn't burn.
Soon after that, I go down this alley and there's 3 dudes just standing around. They seem to be Bones Dick Riders, but I'm in need for some deck capacity. In this duel I realized how good one of the cards I had was. See, monster effects in this game can only be used once while the card is face up, so I can't just boost the monster over and over again. However, this card lets you put your cards face down. My theory at the time was if a card goes face down, the card effects might reload. And they actually do. I went to duel Bones and summoned 4 monsters on the first turn against him. Christ, this feels so dirty. His deck is a bunch of weak zombie cards. If you beat the security and the computer back at Kaiba Corp, you could definitely beat this kid. Around the corner is another alley and I was greeted by Esperoba, which is what I thought at first, but it turns out it's one of his brothers. You have to beat him and then you get to fight Never mind, it's another brother. After beating all the little shit stains, now Esperoba pops up. Esperoba and the shit stains all focus on thunder types, which is all I can say about them. Their cards are so laughably weak, I don't think anyone who's ever played this game has ever let him summon Jinzo. Speaking of Jinzo, it's the prize card. Something that I hate in this game is the fact that if your level is too low, you can't even read the cards. You're so weak that you can't even comprehend how good this card is. Next, I duel Rex, finally. Rex got the upper hand on me really fast. He summoned something that was beyond the attack power of my cards at the time, and the default board when you duel him is Wastelands. From now on, certain duelists will start with a board that's to their advantage. Luckily, I drew Yami to weaken his cards and Raigeki to wipe his ass. Now that I beat all the duelists in this spot, a new spot opened up on the map. Right out the gate, I see Strings, but he's not really paying attention to anything. I fought all the extra duelists here and decided to revamp my deck entirely afterwards. See, I saw that Weevil was going to be the next big bad I had to beat. He will most likely have cards that gain a boost in the forest. Since my deck was forest themed, I didn't want him to have an edge or go neutral with him. So, I bought a bunch of warrior cards that were shadow monsters and Sojin.
Look at ninja style.
This way, not only do they get a boost from the field spell, but they also get a boost from a card that boosts shadow cards in my deck. The which boosts shadow monsters by 500 attack and defense points. It's probably one of the best cards in my deck at this point. This card along with Darkness Approaches allowed my shadow monsters to reach ridiculous heights in attack power. I also bought Guilford the Lightning. He's a warrior that could wipe the board when summoned with 2 monsters instead of 3 like the official card game. With the change of field spells in my deck, my Doron's got a boost as well. This card clones itself when you activate its effect, and if you have Darkness Approaches, you can make the original and the clone do the effect again. Now going back to Weevil, he has a deck of cards that get a boost in the forest. However, the majority of cards getting the boost are so weak, I don't even think I had to change my deck to beat him. I'll keep the changes for now because this feels much better than my last deck. Nothing new opened up on the world map, so I decided to go back to Domino City. And there I saw Bones, out in the open. He said some ghouls took all his cards and took over the cemetery. I go up to the cemetery and surprise is none other than Seeker. Now this is the first time you fight one of the rare hunters. The rare hunter default boards are Yami, so you'll go neutral with them if you have a dark themed deck. Seeker's Ace card is the golem card with like 2200 defense. If he summons this, you might have a tough time getting it off the board. I happen to draw into my witches, so I boosted my shadow monsters to get over the golem. The rest of his deck is pure ass though, so I doubt he even has a win condition. I don't even know if he has Exodia. After you beat him, he simply just waltz out the graveyard. I walk out and Bones thanks me for knocking him out of there.
It's macabre.
I check a few places afterwards to see if any events popped up. I went to the toy shop and I saw Joey there talking to the others. He says he's having a rough time in the tournament so far. It only makes sense seeing that the character is literally taking all the locator cards from duelist Joey beats in the anime. I feel kind of bad for Joey's role in this game so far because I effectively took his spot. To what extent, I don't know yet, but I hope he's at least in the finals. After a while, I got lost, so I decided to talk to some NPCs. One of them mentions that creepy stuff happens in the card shop. I knew something was up with that shop. If you don't talk to this specific NPC about the card shop, the game will not progress. You have to make sure to talk to as many NPCs as possible at all times if you're lost. Get to the card shop and right down the aisle is Arcana staring me up. He invites me downstairs for a shadow duel, but before you go down there, you can actually buy cards from the shopkeeper's assistant, which is pretty cool. He has to be in on Arcana murdering people for cards.
Can you trust anybody?
Arcana's deck is not remarkable besides being a spellcaster deck. At this point in the game, most of the opponents still use monsters between 600 and 900 while I'm in the thousands. I've been overprepared for the majority of duels in this game, and now I'm stuck wondering when is the game gonna catch up to me? This game has been Kirby game levels of easy. Afterwards, I go back to Grandpa's shop, and Merrick is in the shop pretending to be Joey's friend. They introduce him as Namu just like in the anime, however, the dialogue for this is very minimal. It's weird to see this game as an RPG because barely any of the characters talk much. They don't even have much flavor text half the time.
This is whack! I can't get jiggy with this shit!
After that scene, the map opens up two new areas, the building and the bridge. I go to the building first and fought some of the people outside of there. Right outside of the building is Mai, and she's willing to duel, but not for a locator card. She wants to keep them to bet against Joey and take his instead. Boards with her start in mountains. She has a few high attack dragons and winged beasts that can reach 1000. She also has a few trap cards that decrease the power of your cards. I think the game is finally trying to ramp up the difficulty at this point. After I beat her, I head inside the building and speak to Joey for a bit.
I'm about to quit, nigga.
He sees your progress and he says to himself that he needs to start catching up. I start to duel everyone in the building at this point. They all have the same deck more or less that's based around thunder and fire monsters around the 800-900 range. I go to the bridge afterwards and there was Kaiba just taking a dump all over this random kid.
Ah, funny.
He tells me to tell Yugi that he's ready for the smoke at any moment. I hope you're ready to lose at any moment. There's a few duelists here you could beat up to get some experience before the boss battle up ahead. String's the next big bad that you gotta beat. He's finally one of the first few opponents that actually has an interesting deck. It's based around duplication, so he uses cards like Toadmaster and Revival Gem. Revival Gem can clone itself in this game, but thankfully it can't attack the turn it does. However, he doesn't get a boost from his own field since most of his cards are Aqua. You would think they would repurpose some of the Rare Hunter starting boards, but I guess not. This is like the halfway point of the game, and it's hard to really speak on the opponents and the decks in this game. Most of them are very unremarkable, even in the late game. After you beat him, you get a message from Merrick. It's just him shit talking.
I thrive off negativity.
The card you get from Strings is Revival Gem, and is probably one of the best cards in this game. If you focus your deck around Umi, you can access a 1950 beat stick cloning itself. And with Darkness Approaches, you can have a board full of these. The problem is the cost of the card.
It's too damn high.
I start to think about future plans to make a water deck if this deck isn't up to snuff for the game. I really do enjoy making decks and combos out of these shitty cards. It makes it feel like you're using every inch of your chest to make something magical and unique. Which is such a shame because this game doesn't really call for that kind of decision making. After those events, you can head over to the aquarium, and the game is slowly trying to catch up with the deck's power level at this point. Every duel in this area starts with Umi. The randoms here have aqua monsters reaching up to 1300 because of that. I found this couple a bit funny. I tried to duel the dude, but he was too busy being a simp, so I asked the girlfriend for a duel. After I beat her, she nags her boyfriend to duel me, and I washed him too. Now she's mad at him while he makes excuses. A few NPCs have a bit more to them than just being experience bags. But it's not enough to make this game interesting in the slightest. Only like 3-4 off the top of my head had weird interactions where they were ongoing side quests, and it didn't lead to anything at all at times. I walk up and I witness Joey getting shitted on by Mako.
Oh, man, you funky.
Mako starts to pop off while Joey starts to feel down about how things went down. Mako even calls him a slug and utter insults. Jesus Christ, this game is like the darkest timeline for Joey. This game feels like one of those episodes in a TV show where something changes and shifts the whole reality into the worst one possible. I legit feel bad even looking at this transpire. They took a beloved underdog character like Joey and just made him a loser, and we took his spot. I'd rather the game just be about Joey than some shitty self-insert. It would have been perfect too. A timeline where Joey actually survives to beat Merrick and face Yugi in the grand finals, or something that sounds more interesting than this. Hell, he's even on the cover of the game. Why treat him like this?
It don't make no motherfucking sense.
Anyways, I do a Mako and push his shit in. That one's for Joey. His deck is similar to the NPCs outside, and I think his is a bit worse because he has the legendary fisherman. For some reason in this game, it's a vanilla monster, so it does absolutely nothing. Even Weevil's Insect Queen, although garbage, actually has an effect. I don't know what happened with this card.
Oh, smell like shit.
I drew so damn well in that game too that he didn't even have a chance to get any footing in the match whatsoever. Afterwards, I head to the shop because it seems like every time I do a major battle, something pops up there. And I was right. Grandpa explains that Joey came in and took Teo away some time ago, but something was off about him. A ghoul comes in later to confirm that they kidnapped both of them. If we want them back alive, we have to turn over our decks. Now, the logical answer would be to turn in our cards for their lives, but this is Yu-Gi-Oh, so you already know how I had to answer this.
No.
You then head out with Yugi to find some clues about the ghouls and your friends. I talked to a few NPCs and wound up seeing Esperoba on the curb. He got beat and kicked out of the alley by a ghoul. I head right in to fight the ghoul. Now the ghouls run fiend decks. Most of the cards they have can range from 900 to 1200. They also have some strong magic cards like Dark Hole. They might seem scary at first, but I soon realized that their whole deck at times is just fiends. So I can just throw down a light monster on the board and it's into the game right there. Down the way I see Bones and it seems like he got his ass beat. Again.
Come on, man.
I can't comment on the ghouls deck because I think most of them have the same deck. I will bring up the fact that I did add a few more copies of good cards in my deck and 3 copies of Trapmaster. Before I only had one and I rarely drew into it, but now the card shop was selling more. In the official game, Trapmaster removes one trap. However, in this game, Trapmaster makes a trap for you instead. It's like an early version of a Trap Tricks card. Because Darkness Approaches resets the effect, you can gain card advantage insanely fast if you draw the right cards. I also added Torrential Tribute, which is effectively Mirror Force in this game since it only destroys the opponent's monsters and not all monsters. After beating the ghouls here, you're tasked to go around the whole map and beat every ghoul you see until the next major event. In the park I came across a ghoul that beat Weevil and it turns out to be Bandit Keith. In the anime he was being mind controlled by Merrick, but it seems like in this game he's doing things on a will of his own. Keith's deck consists of machine cards that have Fiend Attribute, so as long as you have a light card, it's all good. I beat Keith and scattered him off into the wind. I got back to the shop since there was no more ghouls to fight afterwards. Tristan pops up along with Mai. Mai is here because she heard what happened to Joey and is worried about him. She says that Kaiba might have a clue on where they might be since every dual disc has a tracker. I go to Kaiba Corp but no one is here except this guy. I speak to him and he tells me that Mokuba might know where Kaiba is, but when I went inside the building, Mokuba wasn't there. He doesn't even mention where Mokuba might be at. I had no idea where I was supposed to go, so I started dueling some other people in the area. I went to duel Esperoba to get some experience, but it turns out if you duel some of the people in this area, you get hints on where Mokuba might be. Except Weevil, cause he's a piece of shit. I go towards the building and Mokuba is spotted along with Loomis and Umbra. They're using him as bait to get to Kaiba, so we challenge them to a duel to get him back. Now, instead of a tag duel like in the anime, you have a choice between dueling one or the other. I don't think tag dueling became a thing in these games until the Tag Force games. I'm still bitter to this day that it didn't become an actual format. What a missed opportunity. I win and duel both of them by beating one and then resetting to fight the other. Loomis has a deck of Fiend Attribute monsters that are around 1000 to 1200. Because they're fiends, you could just wash them with any light monster. Umbra is a different story though. See, even though Loomis has Fiend Attribute monsters, they were not Fiend types, so they didn't get a boost in Yami. Umbra's deck is filled with Shadow Attribute monsters that are either Fiend types or Spellcaster types. His monsters easily reached 1300, which was not only out of my attack range at times, but I couldn't just put a light monster to run through his whole deck. You need dream cards to win over shadow cards. I don't have any in my deck since my deck mostly focuses on Shadow Warriors. I got a handle on the duel not too far in it by making my monster clone itself and sacrificing it for a ninja. Then I boosted that card to seal the deal. Save Mokuba and he starts being a shit stain out the gate. We just saved this shit. He's saying shit like, don't expect me to thank you. I'm about to finish what the brothers started. The little shit stain ends up telling us that Kaiba's at the museum. So we head off to the museum. Kaiba is irritated with the fact that we're here to ask for help on top of the ghouls fucking up the tournament. Beating the duels would do him a favor, so he helps us out. He says it seems like the duel disc is at a pier, so we head off to the pier and we get spotted by rare hunters on the way there. Bandit Keith is amongst them and we have to duel him one more time to get out of this situation. I duel Keith for the second time and it seems like his deck changed a lot. It's still machine cards, but the attributes for the cards have changed from fiend to a various mix of type. However, I had a really good start with Trap Master. I summoned a ninja soon after and it was a wrap. Up ahead we meet up with Joey and Taya, but they're both mind controlled. He forces Yugi into a duel to the death. If he refuses, Merrick will have Taya bite into a poison capsule. Yugi agrees to the duel but can't muster up the strength to beat him in it, so he ends up losing the duel and his life. We jump in to save him, but I'm pretty sure that goes against the conditions of the duel they had. So I don't know why Merrick didn't just have Taya bite into the capsule right there and then. But nonetheless, we save Yugi and we end up dueling Joey. I had a terrible start in this duel. My hand was incredibly bad and he went first. The monster he set had 1200 defense, which is well over most of my monsters. Even though I summoned a toad to have 2 monsters, I couldn't get over the one he had. He then summons a 1200 attack wolf, switches the other card into attack mode, and wipes the board. I only made a comeback because they attacked with the wolf first, which sprung my trap. If any other card had swung, I would have lost. I got some good footing with the clone cards, but I felt it was time to change the deck a bit. I'm not going water just yet since Revival Gem and the Sea Serpent card I needed to make the deck work wasn't even in the shop yet. So I went and added 3 copies of a 1400 Shadow Monster and another Torrential Tribute. I soon checked the art museum out since that's one of the places that I haven't been inside yet and Ishizu pops up. She then takes me inside to give me a history lesson on a children's card game. Before she tells me anything, however, she has to test me in a duel.
Of course!
Her deck is nothing but light cards and my deck is shadow based, so she never stood a chance. I think you could even beat her with just a deck full of Karibos. I want to address this again, that this game is just piss easy. I have not dropped a single game and the only reason they got close at times was because of poor hands. It feels so difficult to talk about the decks that they have in this game because the majority of them are just bad. It's one thing to be bad but funny, but these are just bad and boring. I understand that the NPCs will have generic decks, but why do some of the main characters have some of the most boring decks too? The card cost in this game is so ridiculously high at times that it's hard to even have a deck of even 3 mid-attack range cards. The developers knew this and instead of trying to pace the game properly by adjusting the values, they just made the majority of the opponents have shitty weak monsters. I should not be seeing cards with 1000 attack power at the end game. Why am I in the last quarter of this game and they are still using nasty ass cards? At least give them decent magic and trap cards. It wasn't until the rare hunters when I started to see a good magic card. Emphasis on A, because they usually only had 1. Anyways, I beat Ishizu and she tells me she actually has a guard card to give. However, you're gonna have to do a Kaiba for it. Now I just went on a rant on how disgustingly easy this game is. Do you think at this point he's either A, a challenge, or B, he's just as dog shit as the rest?
What was your point in coming, nigga?
Kaiba starts to gloat that he doesn't need a god card to become the king of games. Rest assured that in another timeline, you still didn't win your own tournament. Ishizu hands over Obelisk and wow, this card seems really good on paper. No cost, it has a divine attribute so it can't insta lose to any other attribute, and the effect that it can do without sacrificing 2 other monsters. And I'm not gonna put this in the deck. You already see how easy this game is. Does this game call for me to even have this card in my deck in the first place? Now that I have all the locator cards and a god card, it's time to head out for the finals. We all meet up at a stadium with Merrick showing up last. Everyone's shocked that Odeon is Merrick, but Yugi's the only one that has the intuition to know that he's probably not him. Now, in the original manga, Ishizu is also a finalist, but I guess we took her spot. Better her spot than Joey's, cause goddamn they treat him like shit in this game. This also jumbles up the whole canon bracket. It starts off just like the anime with Yugi going against Bakura. It's strange that I didn't even get a chance to duel Yami Bakura yet in this game. I probably missed the opportunity, but at this point it probably wouldn't have mattered. He probably would have been just as easy as everybody else. The next round after them was me and Odeon, and the cucking of Joey continues. Odeon starts off with Wastelands, and it seems like his deck revolves around rock monsters. Usually, Odeon is the trap master in most games, and Shoddy is the rock man, but I guess they forgot the memo in this game. I'm near the end of the game. Why do you have a 1200 attack power monster? The last game I played, most of the in-game opponents had powerful cards out the ass. To go from a properly paced game to this just feels jarring. I used to see this game in a positive light, but now it doesn't even feel like I'm playing a game right now. After I beat Odeon, Merrick starts to shit talk Odeon while Odeon still just dick rides Merrick as he shit talks him.
Get off that nigga dick, bro. What is you doing?
Now in the anime, Odeon being harmed by Raw causes Merrick to lose control to his dark self. But in this game, it looks implied that he just switches to his dark half by choice. Because of how straight to the point the dialogue is in this game, a lot of the context from the manga is left out. The game is like a shallow retelling of the story, as if it was a summary straight from the wiki page. Joey and Merrick are up next, and as you guessed it, Joey gets washed. This game did nothing but shit on Joey. I know the same thing happens in the manga, but they don't even mention that he was going to beat him, let alone close. After Joey gets shitted on the whole story, it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I'm not even a Joey fan, but come on, man. Everyone goes to see Joey in the clinic. Meanwhile, Merrick is just standing over Odeon in the other room. Now again, in the anime, manga, Merrick was trying to murder Odeon in his own sleep because he's the only one that can seal the dark half. But in this, he's just there? The missing context to all these scenarios just makes the game look goofy. If you know how the story goes, you're probably wondering, how is Mai still here? Well, instead of Mai facing Merrick first round, she faces Kaiba, which ends up with a lukewarm victory for him. At this point, I found it hard to even continue because of the blatant disrespect to the lore. It's one thing to change it for something more interesting, but this is just a wiki summary of the plot. I made it this far, so I can't stop now. After that match, we finally get to Kaiba Court Island to settle the finals there. First is me and Yugi for the semifinals. Most of the main characters are upset at this, and I don't blame them. This timeline blows. Mokuba, being the shit stain he is confident that his brother will win the match no problem. Yeah, I already beat your brother, kid, so I don't think this game has the audacity to make Kaiba the final boss, so... Anyways, my duel with Yugi starts. The game starts with Yami on the board. Yugi has a deck of cards that resemble his deck in the anime. Usually in most other games that will be ass, but in this it can be quite troublesome. Most of the beat stakes he has is much higher than the attack of my cards. He also has real good magic and trap cards. My good friend Swords of Revealing Light makes a return, and guess what? It works the same way it did in this game, like in Dark Duel Stories. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out if you have the time, but to summarize, Swords doesn't stay face up on the field, so you have to wait 3 turns with nothing to stop it. I drew well enough to destroy the problem cards like Dark Magician Girl and Baphomet and move on to the final.
Not a single card can stand up to this. I call on Blue Eyes White Dragon!
Did you think it would go down any other way? It all comes down to me versus Merrick. Most of the characters here are praying and pleading you pull through. Even Mokuba is saying he would do anything to get Kaiba back from the Shadow Realm. The duel starts with him using Exarion. Now in the official card game, this card pays attack points to pierce. In this game, however, it pays 500 attack points to inflict direct damage to your opponent. So Merrick can summon this card and get a free 1400 damage done directly at me for free. Not to mention the fact that it ends up being 1300, which is higher than the majority of my cards, so the downside is not even that much of a downside at this point of the game. I got rid of it with a magic card and got some momentum. He then summons a 1600 beat stick. I drew a 1400 card, but that's not enough at this point, so I place it on the field for defense. On his turn, instead of swinging at me, he gives me a chance to breathe by sacrificing the beat stick for a legendary fiend. That card can boost itself by 500 attack points, but it can't attack the turn it does it. This gives me a chance to summon a third monster and boost my cards. I just needed one more turn to maybe catch up, and I put everything in attack mode. If he kills the jam in one of the shadow monsters, I have a chance to summon my witch. If he kills the beat stick, I can boost my witch and then boost the other witch again with darkness approaches. If he kills the witch, I can summon another witch and boost my beat stick to 2400 and keep things at a standstill. Usually in the past Yu-Gi-Oh games, the AI will always attack the lowest attack monster no matter what. It was a way to game the system. However, he summons a lamp that has an effect to special summon La Jinn out of thin air. Also, the AI does not swing for the lowest attack power monster in this game, so any plans that I formulated was just thrown out the window, and I lost soon after. This was the first time I lost to someone in this game. The game's power scaling goes from people with monsters barely reaching 1300 to Merrick having level 4 monsters with 1600 to 2000 attack power. Again, why is the pacing in this game so dog shit? I rushed back to duel him and I drew the nuts. I washed him so bad I made the last game look like he got lucky. And that's it. The dark side leaves Merrick and plops him on the ground, and everyone who lost to him starts to wake up. Even the little shit stain thanks you for what you did. The blimp gets back to Domino, and as soon as we land, we're greeted with Ishizu thanking us for stopping Merrick. She asks for the god cards soon after. I try to say no to her, but she basically said, and scene. I feel a lot of people have positive memories about this game and see it in a good light. When I played this game when I was younger, I remember liking certain things about it, but I couldn't help but feel like something was missing. That thing that was missing was the game's pacing and need to push you to become a better player. Most Yu-Gi-Oh games, no matter how bad, push the player to make the best deck they can make. This game, however, makes me feel like I would have been fine with the first deck I made for everything up until Merrick. Something else that's missing is the identity of everyone's deck. Sure, they have monster types that they stand for, but overall, what was their strategy? Even something like Dark Duel Stories was able to have a sense of deck archetypes and win conditions for most of the opponents, so why not this game? The game barely qualifies as an RPG either. Most of the choices are not really choices and the dialogue is too minimal. The only thing I feel like I enjoyed from this game is the deck building and the system itself. It's not a bad game per se, but it's far from a good one. Even bad Yu-Gi-Oh games can leave a mark, but this left nothing. I'd rather play Dark Duel Stories over this game. However, most of the issues I have with this game is fixed in the sequel, but at what cost? Find out when I make my next video on Yu-Gi-Oh! The Reshef of Destruction.